Welcome to the Cookbook, where we invite guests on to share the ingredients of what has helped make them the successes that they are. All of it, the good, the not so good. You're not going to find anything half-baked here. And our kitchen gets messy sometimes. That's when the fun starts. So come on and join us. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Cookbook. Yes, say it with me. I'm excited about my guest today. As you know, I'm excited about all of my guests. Today, I'm super excited. We have Brandi Christiansen. She's the CEO of Mental Health America, the Midwest region. And Brandi and I met a few months ago, and we just kind of hit it off, and we've been talking ever since. And I thought that she would be a great guest on this show. So I am going to read her bio, and then I'll introduce you to Brandi. So Brandi is a veteran of the United States Navy, an Appalachian, I would say Appalachian, I know it's probably Appalachian, trail through hiker, and a former semi-pro women's football player. She's badass, let me just tell you that. She studied anthropology at the University of Iowa and has spent her professional career advocating to improve the lives of those affected by mental health and substance use disorders. Brandi's own experiences have shaped her drive to confront the discrimination embedded in social stigma and the institutionalized policies that reinforce the uninformed beliefs that mental illness is different from other diseases. Brandi is a proud recipient of the Community Freedom Award for outstanding leadership and commitment to behavioral health from the Community Health Network and the Howard County Chamber of Commerce's Women of Excellence Breakthrough Professional Award in 2018. Brandi serves as the vice chairperson of the Indiana National Guard Relief Fund. She's a member of the Tippecanoe County Drug-Free Coalition and chairs the Tippecanoe Legislative Forum. So without further ado, let's meet Brandi. Hey there. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad that you could join me today.
I'm glad I could too. It means everything's going okay.
There you go. There you go. So the first time I met you was at one of the Chamber's Rise and Shine events, and you were the featured speaker, and I was really blown away by what you do. So why don't you kind of touch a little bit on what you've done, kind of like what you said at the Chamber that day.
I know. I knew you were going to want me to do that because I was like, that is an ungodly hour. I will just say that it was the last day of the month, and it was the last day of the month of May, or the last Friday of the month of May, which is a super busy 14-hour days all throughout the month, because that's the time when people say, oh, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. Let's see if Mental Health America wants to talk to us and about mental health. And of course, we always say yes, because we have to capitalize on our opportunities to talk about the very thing that really is affecting 1 in 4 of our, and probably post-pandemic, they're saying it's probably more like 1 in 3 of our families in nationwide. But, you know, I can only really speak to right here in the heartland where we serve across 11 counties. And so, yeah, we spend a great deal of effort on our pillars. We work on educating the public for some early intervention and prevention efforts for suicide prevention, and just mental health, just opening up the topics to talk about it. And then we provide case management, and we it's through a navigator case management program where we connect individuals and families to services, because if you are attempting to get some mental health resources or sign up for some clinical services, it's really, really hard out there right now. Just like everywhere else, it's super scarce. The resources are scarce, critical labor shortage for clinical providers. And so we do that. We sit down with them. We basically grab a machete and cut through all that red tape and do all the hard work of finding a provider that matches with insurance and hits all the needs that people are looking for. I call them case managers meet telemarketers. It's a unique skill set, and they work their tails off. So I always want to give them a shout out.
Cool. And you guys just became like one of the, is it 811 or what is
988
988? I was going to say that.
crisis
I wasn't
centers in
sure.
the state
Hmm.
of Indiana, and so that's that crisis intervention. And we do have a call center. We've been operating the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline since I believe 2014. And then we have peer services for people who are just wanting to enter in recovery or need an extra leg on their stool to help prop them up while they get engaged in recovery, and support groups, screenings. We run the gamut. We just try to to fill in the gaps that the clinics and the providers and the other agencies around town just can't do. Nobody can do it all. So we've been doing it since 1950. And I anticipate we'll still be doing it 50 years from now. So
And
yeah.
that's that. I mean, it's so important, and especially nowadays, um, there's such a focus on mental health. Yes, the pandemic, I think, brought up a lot of mental health issues that people had, and uh, the fact that there are organizations such as Mental Health America locally here, I think, is huge, right? And speaking outside of the Cookbook podcast, and as the president of Unmasking Lafayette, this year we have Six Alarm Peer Support, and hoping that next year we'll be able to do, for the next 2 years, Mental Health America, and get you out there and raise money and awareness for you guys locally, because it's so important. I don't think that uh, I don't know, when the focus on mental health really got zeroed in on. But I think it's so important now that it has, because there are so many people out there with mental health issues that need help that wasn't available before because the spotlight wasn't on it.
Well, in typical, fashion, the spotlight wasn't put on it until it was its own pandemic. So it's not as though we didn't understand that the problems were there. It's not as though our jails and prisons weren't overrun by people who had, undiagnosed mental health conditions. It just permeated to every single uh, household. And I think that the pandemic lended the authority of people to be able to, surpass that stigma and just say, you know what, I'm anxious, I'm afraid, um, I'm depressed, I'm isolated, and we okayed it to talk about it. And then it was like, oh, and by the way, there's an absolute tidal wave coming right at us. We've been shouting from the rooftops for a very long time, and nobody has listened. And now our legislators are forced to listen, because what's happened is it's seeped into the very fabric of the industries that uphold capitalism, and we are a capitalistic society. So now that our supply chain is threatened by labor shortages that are, absolutely impacted by mental health and addiction. I mean, look, we lost 1 million laborers in the past 10 years in the opioid epidemic. I'm
Wow.
talking working aged individuals. And
Wow.
then we
That's
lost, however many more during COVID. And yes, a lot of those impacted were older, but not all of them. And then, we just have, we're seeing a generation that isn't buying the same types of traditions and institutions that our parents and our grandparents believed in, because they
right.
saw the reality of it. The
Right.
loyalty was completely one-sided. So
Oh, it's funny because my wife has been with the same company for 17 years, and you don't see that anymore.
that's rare.
It's really rare. And at the beginning of COVID, we talk about mental health. I always considered myself pretty, for those who know me, I'll say sane, and they'll be like, yeah, whatever. But pretty stable. Um, and it affected me in a really hard way. And uh, it, my biggest fear was that my wife or myself would die in the hospital alone. And so my biggest fear was going to the hospital. And I was in such a tizzy that I gave myself a panic attack, which I thought was a heart attack. So we went to the emergency room. And I honestly, I didn't think I was ever going to see her again. It was the most frightening thing I think I'd ever been through. And then I get there and they do the EKG and they're like, your heart's fine. It's a panic attack. Go home. And I was like, I can go home. And they were like, yeah. So I called her up. I'm like, pick me up. And she came and she got me. And I looked at her and I was like, I just want to start feeling good again. I just don't feel good. And she said, I'm more worried about your mental health than your physical health. And I reached out to a therapist that I'd seen 20 years ago who was like still, I couldn't believe she was still around. But, I reached out to her and we worked out uh, about 2 months in. My whole freak out was that I couldn't control what other people were doing. I couldn't control that they weren't wearing masks. I couldn't control that they weren't taking it seriously because we had somebody at the top that wasn't taking it seriously. So I couldn't control any of that. And I am a type A. And, it really did a number on me once I realized that I couldn't control that, but I can control my area. Um, I was like, we need to move. We got a bigger house. I was like, I'm not doing the pandemic in this house. We need to move. And, I needed a separate space that because she's an essential worker, she could go take her clothes off, go take a shower upstairs, come back downstairs. And then, so I was able to control my environment. I couldn't control anybody else, and that's fine as long as I can control mine. And that was a really heavy thing to realize, you know. So, and it still kind of freaks me out that people aren't taking it seriously, but I do what I can.
Well, and then there was a lot of misinformation. There was a lot of competing information. You had kids that were going to school and they were afraid that they were going to kill their grandparents. And you had grandparents that were just like, hey, you know what? I can't handle this isolation anymore, so I'm going to take my chances. And it just, I mean, they'll be dissecting the ramifications, I'm sure, for decades to come.
Oh, yeah.
But the point is, we have experienced a huge decline in the interim of, youth and just mental health and addictions in general. So there aren't enough providers. Um, the government is investing in these call centers and changing the way that we're going to respond. So hopefully, there will be some good beneficial things that come from it. But it's you still have a lot of people that say, well, it's not mental health, it's not this, it's not that, but they have multiple generations of trauma and they're still inflicting it.
Right.
So,
And people, I don't think, you know, looked at trauma for what it was. They were just like, you had a hard childhood. And they kind of like blew it off. But that was traumatic shit that they went through, right? And it was trauma. And it does, lead into adulthood. And I think that, I've seen so many people that that their lives are affected by what happened as a child, and they try to blow it off. But I think at the end of the day, you really can't, because that's part of who we are, right? I mean, that's what made us strong, or what made some people just give up, sadly.
well, and if you don't do your healing, then you're just going to pass it on to the next generation.
Right.
You're going to pass it on to your coworkers. You're going to pass it on to your teachers, to your loved ones, and likely you won't even be conscious of it. But you'll just know that deep down, you're not living an authentic life, and it will erode the way that you experience life. So, um, I speak from personal experience, of course,
Mhm.
but it's not. I'm not the only one that has this record in my repertoire. So, I guess that's the most important reason why I'm here, is because I feel obligated to light the path for others who may be coming after me. And a lot of it is, just people that are internally working here, because you can do a lot of harm if you don't do your healing while you're trying to help other people.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if it's the same boat as you, but I definitely had a traumatic childhood. And, um, I think we're all works in progress, right? I think that we're healing each day. I think at my age, which we'll kind of leave out, but when you get to my age, um, you've lived like so many lives, and you've gone through the trauma. And you know I look back. I had a conversation with somebody who enlightened me on that, made my whole life make sense. And it was that my 7-year old self was traumatized, and she dealt with trauma a certain way, and that's how I dealt with conflict my whole life. um, and when that was brought to my attention and I looked back, it was like, holy shit, my whole life made sense. The
Hmm.
choices that I made, decisions that I made, people I was with, um, everything just kind of made sense. I'm still healing from that, from knowing that. It's just like, oh crap. So now, now when I make a decision, I make it from a place that's not that. I can make it from a healthier place. The 7-year old used to run away all the time,
Hmm.
right? The 62-year-old doesn't. So I think I run towards it now so that I can get through it and get to the other side of it. So that was my lesson.
And I don't think anybody gets to say that they haven't experienced trauma now. That's the one thing that the pandemic did, is it legitimized that. You
Okay.
didn't have to be, say, someone that experienced a certain type of event to qualify for this trauma lens, right?
Right.
So that's the thing that we need to keep in mind, is all those 7-year-olds that were out there experiencing this collective trauma that will inform, likely, uh, into their geriatric years. I remember when I was a nurse's aide, I was 17, and I graduated early, not like because I was smart, but because I just happened to fall into one of those weird time periods. My birthday is in early November, and
But you're still smart. I just want to throw that out there. But go ahead.
well, I'm not conventionally smart. I'm not gonna it wasn't I was some kind of genius kid, and they're like, hey, skip up a year.
Gotcha.
They were like, well, you kind of fall into this weird time, and we can try it, and if anything, we can always just hold you back. And so I don't even remember why I was saying that, but
We were talking about how I guess trauma, how you take trauma into what you do, and how how uh, shoot, now I'm going to forget. But I think it was basically about, you were talking about being a nurse, probably about how the trauma affected you, maybe when you were a
yeah,
nurse's.
I just remember it felt a little bit different, you know. And when I graduated, that's what it was. So I graduated when I was 17, and
Right.
so I had an opportunity to get a real job, um, maybe a little bit younger than most people, and I ended up being a certified nurse's assistant in the local nursing home. And I remember the World War II. it might have been World War One, but World War Two folks that were, stuffing food in their mattresses. They had this collective memory of starving. And much like that, I suspect that, when we get into the nursing homes, we'll be experiencing looking for masks and trying to wash our groceries. And I feel like it's that type of a mark of a generational scar.
Wow.
That's why I brought that up.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, and it's something that certainly as adults we're gonna take that with us, right?
Hmm.
So for the young ones, and for the young ones, I think some of it's different because I think it depends on the household. If it was the household that believed in it, then they're going to experience something different than the household that didn't. Did I say that right? For the household that didn't believe in it, they're going to experience something different from the household that did believe in it, right? So where, you know, um, yeah, I've spoken to people that their kids, um, they wear masks and everything, and there were kids in their class that didn't wear masks because their parents said that it was all bullshit. So to them, it was bullshit. So I think the experience, I think there's going to be different experiences with it.
Yeah, but kids also hear different things from different people. So, you know, um, I think it could be have been in, yeah, I think it really does depend individually on what their
Hmm.
experience was. But I think for the most part, there was a time when we were all pretty concerned,
Yeah,
pretty
no,
afraid.
I agree with that. So, okay, so what were you doing before you became the CEO of Mental Health America?
Oh, well, how far back do you want to go? Because I've done a little bit of everything. I decided to be sort of a Renaissance person.
I don't know, like a few years prior. How's that?
So
Or
yeah,
or no, what led, because every job that we've ever had, leads us to where we are now, right? So what led you, what was your path? How's that?
well,
That's
it
Skylar
was it
wants to
was
know
kind of a
also.
wandering path. I grew up pretty blue collar. I was blue collar in the Navy. I wasn't an officer. I was a wrench turner. You know, and I've always done blue collar work. I've worked in kitchens. I was pretty good short order cook, really. Um, can make some mean eggs now as a result of that. But I worked in uh, trash removal. I worked in, just all kinds of things. I was a truck driver. My partner always jokes that I'm going to write a book called "From Truck Driver to CEO," and I laugh back and I say it'll be from truck driver to CEO to truck driver again, and we laugh. Um, but it wasn't. I don't think it wasn't anything anybody expected me to do or be, least of all me. Um, this is entirely just based upon I would say, based upon a couple of things. My own investment in my mental health in my 30s um, that showed me, the examination of my foundation, and the very hard work. I don't by any means want to downplay the difficulty that it is to really work on your mental health,
Mhm.
um, especially if you've had some significant childhood trauma. But then, I've always worked really hard. I've had a really good work ethic, and so once I know I can do something about it, I just rolled up my sleeves and did it. Well, let's fix it then, and then I would pair that with my faith, just every time. All right, where am I supposed to be next? All right, I'm about tired of saying that though, because it's got me in some doozies. Tell you that right now. I'm like, okay, I'm not sure about this, but I have an impetus. I need to work. I'm not the type of I've tried to be a lazy bum, and I'm really good at it for short periods of time, like a weekend.
Right.
um I cannot go longer than a week without working. It's weird. um but it's also like I need to have a noble profession. I need to know that I'm making a difference. um and I think I would classify everything I've done pretty much as noble. Feeding people, taking care of their trash, I mean, that's all people. Those are things that human beings need.
Right.
But at some point, it became apparent I think after I was a substitute teacher for 4 years, and I really struggled with it initially. And then once I realized that I was just so concerned about what the teachers thought about me, and I was like, you know what? I can interface with these kids in their own language, at their level, and I can get somewhere. And I've got this template that the teacher left me, and we're gonna get through it, just like mom's to-do list when I was a kid. We're gonna get through it, but then we're gonna play, right? We're gonna find some frogs and catch some turtles and all the weird stuff I did when I was a kid. And it was just, it was putting it in their hands and learning. This is gonna sound awful, but how to manipulate a room full of little people who are thrilled to death that the regular teacher isn't in today, and they think that they're about to get by with something, and traversing that with discipline, but also humor, and just kind of cultivating this rhythm, and just saying, you tell me how's it going to go today, because we can do this and have fun, or I can just do this, and we can battle all day, and we don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. um but I'll just, we'll just one by one go to the principal's office if we have to.
Right.
um we can just stick with discipline. It's up to you, but we can have a good time. And invariably, we almost always had a good time. And that's when I realized that people are, we never really get past our personalities are pretty forged by the time we're in fourth, fifth grade. And I learned that I could drop some little alternative ideas, for example, um, that may cause them to reflect on what they believe to be concrete truths, because we're all culturally programmed.
Right.
And half of therapy to me was examining my cultural programming brick by brick, and being like, well, I was told that my whole life, but when I use my own observations and my own senses, that's really not true at all. And then, okay, I can put that down. And so I would just, I remember one time a little boy called another boy a girl, and I just whipped around, and I was just like, don't you compliment him like that. And all the boys were like, what? And all the girls just beaming, like, that's a compliment. And just little things like that. I was doing some weird thing. I was living this life. I was very happy. Can I just say I was very happy? And I was living this life where I was examining, what does it mean to kind of fend for yourself in an urban setting? How can I grow 30 to 40% of my own food? How can I create some passive solar? Just weird little things to just define what empowerment meant for me. Independence, because I value independence and I value free will so much so that um, I missed an opportunity to attempt an intervention with my sister, because of it, because of my absolute honor of free will. And I didn't understand. I wasn't equipped. I hadn't gone to the trainings. I didn't understand even how to begin a conversation like that at that point. And so, yeah, I went and hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2012. I came back. I had left myself a letter saying, whatever you do, you're having a really good day, and still, please don't ever come back and be a substitute teacher again. And of course I did it anyway, because it was easy. I
Of course.
tried other things. I really did. Um, but it called me back. I really like working with kids and challenging them, and watching them discover critical thinking and things like that. Um, That was really long-winded, but so I after that I played football for a year. I have these challenges, right? I'm due for a physical challenge because I'm really getting out of shape. But this last challenge was a professional challenge beyond any. So I started working at Bonavista with adults with intellectual disabilities. Absolutely loved it. Same thing. It was all about, hey, why aren't we challenging these people? Why aren't we exploring empowerment? Like it's written on our wall, but the system just keeps us with low expectations um and it just wasn't. I don't know. They won my heart over working there, but I challenged them. It's like, you can do better than this. What do you want a job? What do you really want to do? Things like that. And I realized how hard the bureaucracy really holds people down.
Mm.
The
Oh yeah,
program and the all of that.
yeah.
And so, I took a summer off because it kind of got a little toxic over there, and I came back and uh, I tried to not work. It was my turn. I was married at the time, and that was our agreement: was one would not work and the other one would. And well, I'm not very good. It turns out at just making fences out of scratch and just motivating myself to do things and canning and stuff. So I just put it out there. You know, where do you want me next? I ended
Well,
up at Mental Health America in Howard County, and within a few years, I lost my sister, who was my best friend. I lost
I'm
my
sorry.
dog. I lost my marriage, and I was asked to apply for this position over here, and I did, and it seemed like everything was going to be just dandy, and I was just moving up in the world, and that's how I got here, right
Wow,
before the pandemic.
good timing too. Well, that's a great story. Wow, and I'm very sorry about your sister and your dog and well and
It
your
was a,
marriage.
it was a rough run.
Yeah, it seemed like just a whole. It comes in threes, right? It sucks. Um, so so how is this position? And I probably know some of this already, but how is this position different than any others that you've had? Like how, um, what skills have you had to utilize in this position that you maybe didn't, or if you have that you're utilizing them differently in this position?
Well, first off, I'll just say that there's an incredible yoke of responsibility that um, is placed upon your shoulders. You allow it. You stand there. It's not like you didn't ask for it. Um, it's coming. But how it plays out in terms of, especially going through a pandemic and knowing that your employees are struggling with their own mental health and their families are struggling, and all of these volunteers are giving of themselves, but that they're all going through the same thing, and you have people in your supportive housing, and you're always thinking about, is everyone is everyone okay? Is everyone else okay? Is the budget okay? Did I submit that grant in time? Are we in compliance with everything? If they did an audit right now, are we good? And so you have to keep everything audit ready 24/7, and it takes an enormous toll on your physical health. It makes you age very quickly. It's an honor, you know. It's an honor. It's a privilege, but it's not. It's heavy.
Right.
It's heavy.
And I yeah, and I've seen some of that, so I get it. But I will say that you handle it very well, I think. Um, uh, just from what I've seen in some of the interaction, that I've seen, um, I think you handle it real well, and
I
not a
appreciate
lot
that.
not a lot of leaders do. And you are a leader, and I think that alone speaks a lot, because somebody in your position could just be a boss, right? And when it comes to the CEO, I think what a lot of people don't realize is that you have to answer to your board of directors, right? And when you have staff, they need to be bringing solutions to you, not problems. And when they're bringing problems to you, then it messes your shit up, because you're supposed to be doing this, but now you have to handle that. And so I get it. I've done it before. I was working with a CEO, and uh, I thought it was a different capacity, but I was bringing problems. It was like, hey, how do we, do this, and how do we do this, and that kind of blew up. Um, but it was a huge lesson for me, to know how that works. And I think that when people get it, like when somebody has a conversation with them, and it's like, hey, this is how it's supposed to go, it makes them go, oh, oh, okay. And but you didn't like laud that over anybody. You weren't like, I'm the CEO and this is how it has to go. You brought in resources, and
Well, yeah, and this isn't. I think because I never expected to be a CEO. It's interesting because I don't really have an investment in it, in the title itself. Um, I'm acutely aware of the responsibility of it, and the opportunity to try to take a vision that's in your heart and in your head, and manifest that for the betterment of your community is a
right,
gift, right? So finding the team to help you deliver that gift, it's always going to be a challenge. I mean, someone else's perfect team, I mean, there's many different types of CEOs. I guess what I'm trying to say is, you know, I don't have a sense that I'm entitled to this position, or that I will be in this position forever. You know what I mean? Um, I just have today. I have right now, and if anyone knows me, I'm so f- fast and hard and just driving, because I feel like if one thing, I was always kind of like that. Like, my mom told me that I walked before I crawled, and they had to force me to crawl because I don't know, something about leg development. But, you know, losing my sister made life really finite. It made me realize that we really are here for a short period of time. And it made me realize that I wanted to infect enough people with purpose, because that's what I see. That's what scares me, is I see apathy. I see apathy everywhere. I
yep,
see that's what scares me for collectively, for some reason. There just seems to be a lot of apathy. I remember, just to put it in perspective, and I'm not saying anything is better or worse, it's just different.
hmm,
When I was a kid, we all wanted our driver's license, man. We wanted our independence. We wanted to go. Give me the keys now. I'm not trying to pass go. I'm not trying to collect $200. I'm trying to get out, and I do not want to And maybe it's because when we got out there, we were kind of truly free. I mean,
Yeah.
nobody was tracking our cell phones. We didn't have cell phones. Nobody was GPS tracking our vehicles. I mean, if we made mistakes and got in a bind, depending on the bind, I mean, we had to
Figure shit out
yeah.
ourselves.
And some of it wasn't
Yeah.
great, some of it
Right.
meant you were kind of in some sketchy situations. But there's something, you have to have purpose to want to do things, to get up, to be driven. And I wouldn't worry about it so much if we didn't have so much data showing us that the kids are struggling with depression and anxiety, and and just working with them, and seeing just an inability to communicate, even um, unless it's on this device. I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know what the answers are. I worry.
Yeah. No, I hear you. It's funny because even, my wife and I go out to dinner and I have to like be like, let's put our phones down because we've gotten so this has become an extension. It's like another appendage, right? That we depend on. And honestly, if you lose this, most of us are screwed. Now, of course, we have the cloud, so we're safe. But a lot of times, if you lose that, you lose a lot. And it's almost sad that we're so dependent on these uh, machines or whatever. Um, I think that a lot of what's lacking is communication. And that's another reason that I wanted to do this podcast was to communicate with people, to let people communicate their stuff out there. Um, this is a podcast for entrepreneurs and the C-suite, but I think anybody listening to this is going to get a takeaway, right?
Mm,
Just in general. Um, and I, I think years ago, and I don't want to get political, but I'm going to get political for a minute. You used to be able to reach across the aisle. You used to be able to have a difference of opinion and agree to disagree or work together to come up with a solution that will benefit everybody. And that's gone. Like those days are gone. There's either, you know, A or B. There's no AB. Um, and I think that's all because of communication, because people don't communicate. Um, and I think it's sad. I look at the generations, like you said, all they're doing it. They're in the room. They're in the room hanging out, and this is how they're talking. It's like on their phone. They're not even having a conversation. They're literally texting, like, "Hey, so what are we doing here? What are we doing here?" And it's like, put the
yeah.
screw it. Put the fucking phone down and have a conversation. Talk. Look at each other. Make eye contact. Build a relationship. You're not going to build a relationship on an electronic device. At least I don't think not a meaningful one. So, um, I think there's a time and a place, and I think that there's a use for it. Obviously, we need to communicate on that device, but um, I find it ironic that the device that we use to communicate has also helped us not communicate. So it's just kind of this weird dichotomy, right? It's like,
Hmm.
um, so, but, so, for somebody who's in your role, who hasn't been in it before, what kind of advice do you have on how to navigate the role of a CEO? Let's say somebody is either thinking of going for it or they've just been promoted and they have no idea, what it entails or what they need to do.
I would say, if there's a quote, I forget who. It's one of I've kept it up on my wall when I was just cleaning today, and I took it down. But it's so hopefully you can provide the actual source at some point.
I will
But it
Google it.
says, if other people's approval is important to you, then leadership is not for you. Um,
People approval.
you
Interesting.
you are when you are in charge of the mothership, um, you are a target for people who, um, for whatever reason, want to challenge you, or aren't happy, or are insecure, or whatever it is. You must not go into this thinking that you can do this job and be everyone's friend. I think that's more true for females than it is for males. Um,
Oh, oh yeah,
it is. I've
yeah,
watched, um, I've observed, and that's not to rip on them. That's just to say, for whatever reason, um, women are challenged more. Um,
mhm,
so understand that imposter syndrome is just part of it. But there will be other people that will want you to believe in that syndrome as well. Um, so I would just say to understand, you're not going to please everybody with your decisions. And one of the things that it's taken me a long time to make peace with, I think, is that even if you want to be the type of CEO that um, is a people's champion, go ahead and take their advice. But you have to make the decision, because believe me when I tell you that if things don't go right, all those people that were there trying to push you in that one direction, they're not going to be there standing with you when you have to answer for it.
yeah,
So I think that's the biggest thing is, and even if you get knocked down by people, even if you get rolled over, do not dismiss your instincts. Uh, you got there. You were asked to sit at that table. You didn't hold anybody at gunpoint to get there. Um, you earned it, and just be prepared, because it's not a pretty seat. It's not a fun seat. It's really not. It's not a
right.
fun seat.
Wow. And it's funny because that kind of, rolls into entrepreneurship. Um, when we speak to entrepreneurs, we tell everybody that, it's not always fun. And it is a hard place to be at, especially, for entrepreneurs, it's a little different because they're worried about where their next check is coming from and, all that. Um, for I think where you are, it's not pretty because of, everything falls on you at the end of the day, right? The buck stops with you. So whether you're, director of marketing or whoever, something gets messed up, you have to answer to the board. So it's on you. You have a group of people that are on your team that are under you. I mean, it is what it is. You're at the top, and they're all, part of your team that makes up your organization. Um, you're dealing with a whole, bunch of different personalities, and you have to figure out how to navigate that as well. So I think there's a lot um,
And
that.
you have to sing for your supper. You have to, especially in the non-for-profit world. This isn't all
Mhm.
prestige, right? I mean, you're invited to the events, but you're always invited as someone that's seeking funds, and so your job is always to work the room.
Right.
And I don't say this to, I mean, there are wonderful parts to this job. It's just, be realistic going into it. Um, I don't know that I could do anything else, because my ADD mind, the the work itself, the way that my mind works and the way that I'm driven, it's just operating in all these different directions. It's kind of sick, but I love it. And there are a lot of really great people, and I have an amazing board. And we've gone through some really tricky things together. I mean, and I've learned so much from them. And I know that they would say that they've learned from me. And I've had some really great staff and volunteers and clients. It's always the hardest part is is reminding everybody that we are here for the clients. We're here to introduce them into recovery. We're here to shine a light and not to do the work for them, because that just simply doesn't work. I mean, not with what we're trying to do, not with anything, frankly. They have to be willing to do their own work, because that's just the way it goes. I mean, that's universal law.
Right.
Um, but watching them when they do, and then they take the next step, and then they take the next step, it's like you're just so proud. There's that's when you know that you that you're in the right place. So just, it's a whole lot of remembering who you are and why you came.
And then what advice would you have for us? So what challenges have you gone through that you have made it to the other end? So for a seasoned CEO who's listening to this, maybe they're going through a struggle that you've been through and you have been able to overcome, or something that you're going through now that they may be going through.
Yeah, I would say stand by, because I wouldn't even call myself seasoned. I've been doing this for 5 years, but the one thing I'm going through right now is acknowledgement that I need to practice some significant self-care. That compassion fatigue is real, and that the reality is, if you want to operate at your optimal levels, you have to go back to the things that got you there. For me, it's that. And so giving yourself permission, trusting your staff to stand in, even if you've been incredibly burned before, trusting your board of directors, whoever you can trust, to give you that separation. I'm finally going to take a sustained, I think, 4 or 5 days off in a row, and I know I need that. But also giving yourself permission to go back to the things that make you feel like you again. And I'm talking to myself right now. I'm not trying to tell anybody else what to do. I'm just telling you, I'm having some really significant conversations with myself around self-care, burnout. I tend to overdo things. I'm such a all or nothing person, but I'm involved in 3 executive coaching cohorts right now. I'm constantly trying to self-improve, and then I think sometimes that's the wrong kind of self-care, is what I'm starting to believe. So stand by, and let me tell you something. I'm very open to anybody else's suggestions for me as well. I'm just hoping I can get out on the river and just absorb some of that good northern water in my skin and my organs, and feel
And
your
I just did that from on the East Coast, and that's all salt. And there is nothing for me that is more revitalizing than walking on the beach. Just the salt air, and it was funny because I was there, but it was so freaking windy, or it was so hot that I got a little bit in. And then the one day that we actually got to go to the beach, we were standing at the water, and I'm kind of walking in, and all of a sudden the sky got dark and the lifeguards were like, everybody out, there's thunder and lightning. And I'm like, son of a bitch. So we had to go back to the car, and I didn't get my full beach time in, but I got to go out on a boat, and so I got some. But I completely get the whole self-care thing, because I think that we all get to that point. I mean, burnout is real. And if you don't take care of yourself, then you can't take care of others. And I think that the fact that you've recognized that in yourself is a big deal, because some people don't realize it until they've they've gone past that mark.
Most
You know?
people, yeah.
Yeah. So the fact that you did, I think that's great advice. So
I'm just gonna give it as credit for that 5 years of intensive therapy I participated in.
yeah, but it doesn't matter
Yeah.
where it came from, right? I mean it, so for everybody out there listening, burnout is real. And if you feel it happening, and if you feel that you need help, go, there is nothing wrong with asking for help. There's nothing wrong for seeing a therapist or a psychotherapist or whatever. There's no shame in that.
Mm-mm.
Man, I've been in therapy my whole freaking life, until 20 years ago, and then back in again, for a year and a half during COVID. Um, I didn't
Chris,
realize I needed it, but when my wife was like, "I'm worried about your mental health," I was like, "Huh, okay." And then and thank God that I have a wife that, you know, isn't afraid to say, "Hey, you're losing your shit. It's time to do something. You got to do something about it."
mhm.
Maybe not in those exact words, but you know what I mean? So I think that's really important. And having a support system. I know you have a great support system. So,
I have a good afar support system. I have I personally think it takes a lot of courage to ask for help. So when I hear people say it's a weakness, that confronts me in a certain kind of way. But I have there's a core group of people that I served with in La Maddalena, Italy. Um, and I'm actually getting together with some of them here in a couple of weeks
nice.
in Denver. I'm going out for a regional policy conference. And we get together now. I don't know. It's like almost 3 times a year. It's kind of getting a little ridiculous. But I also have the Sunshine Gang, and that's the core group of people that I hiked with in 2012. And so, I have a women's group that I did so much healing with in Kokomo, Indiana, where I came from, through the loss of my sister. And I have a small a couple of people that I've experienced Vipassana meditation with, and I've been blessed with really amazing groups of people at really poignant times in my life. Um, and I've been able to experience um, what we would just call true agape, the elevation of the human consciousness, and it's hard to walk away from something like that when you've had that. It's never, yeah, you never forget it. And so you just want to spread that as much as you can, and find um those opportunities and share that. And you want everyone to experience it because it's so beautiful. And you think that maybe if people could just for a short period of time experience that, they would understand that we're all connected, and this world could be the place that we're told it can be.
Hmm. No, I agree 100%. And um, I started mindfulness during the pandemic
Mm.
um, because I was losing my mind. And it really made a big difference. And I've always felt, did you see the movie Avatar?
Hmm.
Okay, so you know how
Is that the big blue people?
yeah, the big blue people, right?
Yes.
And they're all connected, and they put their hands in the earth, and they feel this like connection to that tree of life, or
Hmm.
whatever it is. I've I've always felt that way. I've always felt that we are all connected. And um, when I got into mindfulness, it was this whole collective of people going through the same thing that I was going through. And everybody that I have met, and I told you this when we met, everybody that I've met since I opened up my heart, and I guess I've manifested or whatever, has been involved in that in one shape or form or another. Um, and it's just been really interesting because when you meet those like minds and they've gone through the meditation, they've gone through that feeling of connection, I think it's a, I think there's no going back at that point, personally, because once you've felt that, you can't unfeel it, right? So, I mean, for me,
It
I,
fades. I mean, it's for me, it's faded. I mean, I've had some really awesome um, vibrational moments in certain groups. It's unsustainable in this
Mhm.
outward world,
Yeah,
but I know it's there.
yeah, and you can always go back to it, right? Like you can always go into a room and close the door and meditate if if you choose. I like my mindfulness coach has been trying. I've been trying to meditate. She sent me while I was on vacation like a meditation every day. I didn't do one. I did mindfulness when we stood by the ocean, and I kind of do my breathing, but meditation, it's hard. It's hard to do, but when you do it, I think it's kind of cool. Um, so, okay, we're at an hour. See, I told you this goes by so fast, right? Um, so first off, I want to thank you um, for taking time out. And I know you're busy, and I know you're in the middle of like a whole ton of stuff right now. So, um, yeah, I
Deep
really
breaths.
breathe it. You got it. You got this. Um, so, thank you for that. And uh, the last question that I always ask everybody is, what is there you go. It's up on the board. Tell us something that lights your fire. Like, what is the one thing that you are so passionate about? And it could be personal, it could be professional, it could be whatever it is that lights your fire.
Well, I think it's finding new ways to bring your passions to life. Um, so I think, like for me, I always get jazzed when it's something that I think can be proactive and something that I can work with youth and give hope. Um, but really, it's just watching people step into their own personal power that jazzes me. Um, Watching them become aware of the complexity of their own being and understanding that it doesn't have to be this way, that there's a whole universe that they can traverse um, under their own under their own circumstances, however they want. And I think that we're kind of starting to see that with young people, which kind of sucks, is affecting the labor shortage, because they're seeing that they can have different ways of earning livings and things like that. But you know just watching people transcend what they think is their reality, I think that really jazzes me.
Cool. And drums. I know drums jazz you too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right.
I used to be pretty big into music.
So cool. Well, I think that's really awesome. And I think that, as far as the youth thing, a lot of the young people that I'm meeting want to be entrepreneurs. They don't want to work for other people. And I think you're right. That's where the labor shortage is coming in, because people are, they've seen their parents treated like crap by the companies, or, whatever. And they're like, I don't want to,
But
I'm
I
going
would tell them, you still got to learn the fundamentals, man. You still got to put in some sweat equity and learn some things, and then go on, because
to
otherwise
100%.
there's a whole in between stage.
That's right. And it's not, you can't be lazy and do it. You got to go out there, do the work, and then, figure it out. So, yeah.
But I
So,
think that they'll be okay. I think it's just they've got to be they've got to be given a chance to
yeah,
fall down and pick themselves up. That's the thing. They'll
right.
figure it out.
I agree.
I'm
I have hope.
optimistic.
Me too. Me too. So, Brandi Christiansen, thank you so much
Thank you,
for
Iris.
being on the Cookbook. And hopefully, we'll see you on your own podcast soon.
Maybe. I'd like it.
Well, we will
Thanks,
figure
Cyrus.
it out. You're welcome. Thank you.
Appreciate
And
you and
oh,
Patrick.
I appreciate you always. I heart you. So, and everybody who's been listening or watching, and I always say, if you've been sitting here watching this for an hour, good on you, because it's kind of hard. But if you've been listening to this, thank you. Really appreciate the folks out there. I've been getting emails. I appreciate the emails. Leave comments, like, share, subscribe, download, do all the things. And again, just appreciate everybody who's been listening, and I appreciate all of your comments. And all of those comments help make this better and help make me better. So thank you, and go out and find what lights your fire. Till next time, guys. Bye.